Hey there, welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive, both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode 183 is titled, Let's Talk Music Business with Dr. Katherine Emeneth. Hey there, music friend. Before we get into the conversation with Katherine, which is all about music business, I want to give a few people a quick shout out. To those who attended my 1215's webinar, thank you so much for your support. It was wonderful to see your bright, shining, beautiful faces coming in and hanging out to talk about corporate sponsorships. So if you missed the webinar, no worries. The replay is available from now until 12/31/21. If you would like more information about the two biggest mistakes that podcasters make when it comes to obtaining corporate sponsorships, then you need to watch this impactful webinar. Plus, there was some great conversations at the end in the live Q&A. So if you want that replay, go to HeidiKBegay.com and send me a message through the contact subdomain, or shoot me an email at HeidiKBegay@gmail.com. That's HeidiKaybegay@gmail.com. Now, you only have a few weeks to access the webinar. So if you're interested in corporate sponsorships, then please message me. Yeah, I mentioned a few shout outs. I want to thank, again, those who reached out and came to the webinar, and they included my podcasting and musician friends. Now, it was a special treat because not only did I get to reconnect with y'all, but you guys got to start connecting with each other. You know that I'm a huge advocate for building relationships. So reach out like you did and start really cultivating these relationships, because what can it do for your business and for your podcast? But major kudos to the following people and their shows. Thank you to Angela and Jen through Tuned and Strong podcast, to Tom and Bob through the business side of music and their podcast, SBO's Great Music Podcast with Danielle and her beautifully put together YouTube channel all about harp and harp compositions, Clark with Chase the Music, and last but not least, the Stay Amazing Show podcast with Ricardo. If you would like to access corporate sponsorships for your podcast today, not chump change like what Anchor provides, $15 per 1,000 views. Come on now, give me a break. That's insane. I would love to help you get real money to put not only back into your podcast or your business, but actual viable income that you can put in your pocketbook, okay? So I have a class that's going down on December 22nd and December 29th, where I walk you through who, what, where, when, and how to obtain these corporate sponsorships. I know I can give you valuable information because I've been doing it now for 3+ years. I've worked with huge companies like Powell and Haynes, Carolyn Nesbaum, Texas Flute Society, David Straubinger, Fonz, and so much more. There's a strategy, and I want to give you that strategy because you shouldn't do it alone. Go to my website at HeidiKBegay.com and sign up to the December class today, and I can't wait to see you. Thanks. Hi, Katherine.
How's it going?
Good. It's so good to see your beautiful, wonderful face.
Likewise. I'm on vacation, kind of. So I've got my turkey hats right here and some other little goodies for the kiddos, and just having a great time.
Yeah. Well, Thank you so much for carving out time, no pun intended. Thank you for carving out time during your holiday week. That is so sweet of you.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me to have a chat.
Oh, for sure. So the last time you and I saw each other actually was back in Salt Lake City in 2019.
Yeah, that's right. At the NFA convention.
It's been a few years.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, but I'm so glad that our paths have crossed. And now that I get to actually sit down and like pick your brain for a good 30, 40 minutes is just the best.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to chat about all these things.
So, as you know, not only did our paths cross back in 2019 and we started getting to know each other, but I've been watching you from afar. And I just love how you've been contributing so much to our community. And then, our relationship is scaling that much more because you are actually a presenter at the Ultimate Music Business Summit as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that.
I'm so pumped that you are going to be one of the presenters because you may not know this, but I'm going to say it. You probably do know this, but like I just said, you hold so much value, and I really cherish the contributions that you bring to our flute community, and that's why I invited you to present at UMBS. And that is something that I'm co-organizing right now with Arthur and Garrett. And so to bring this kind of like full circle, everyone knows I get really dorky about full circle, 360, all of that. But I love bringing a full circle because, yes, we are both flute educators and performers within our niche, but then we're also coming together through this UMBS thing as well. And so throughout December, you're going to be one of 4 guests through 360 who are not only 360 guests, but UMBS presenters. So it's just
cool.
Yeah, so it's just like the cherry on top.
Yes, I'm excited about that too. I think that's a great idea to, bring lots of musicians together who are doing different things and help others become aware of what is possible in music.
I love that. Very cool. So enough of me gabbing about how wonderful you are, because I could do that all day. Can you share with the listeners a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Katherine Emeneth. I know it's a weird last name. I'm married to German. And so, so I went from weird last name for my maiden name, Isbill, to weird last name for my married name, Emeneth. And I'm originally from Lawrenceville, Georgia. And as far as my musical journey starts, I started the piano when I was 8 years old. So piano was my first instrument and I loved it and everything was great. And then as soon as middle school hit, my mom was like, "You're going to play an instrument in the band." And I was like, "But I kind of want to do violin." And she was like, "No, you're going to play an instrument in the band." Both of my parents were in high school marching band and loved it and had many fond memories of that. So they really encouraged me to go into band. And so I was a normal band kid for many years. I did all the normal band kid things. I was in the marching band. I was the section leader. And I didn't actually start taking private lessons until I was in the 8th grade. So I had already had 2 years of flute before I started private lessons. And then even with that, my private lessons teacher was a saxophonist. And so I had private lessons until I outgrew him. And then I went on to have lessons with an actual flutist for 2 years in high school before going into college. For college, I did not know what I wanted to major in, but I knew I was really good at music. And so the advisors said, you should start in music to see how it goes. And you can change later. And then 4 years later, I had a degree in music education. And so after that degree in music education, I didn't really know what else to do. And I knew that I loved the flute and I was a serious flutist. And so grad school seemed like the next best step. And so I auditioned for grad school programs, master's degree programs, and I didn't get into any of them. And as we have, that's like a musician's worst nightmare, I feel like, is auditioning for different programs and not getting in. And so I did not know what to do with myself. I thought I was a failure. I thought I was never going to be a serious flute player. I didn't tell anybody about it. I was embarrassed by it. And so that made me really have to figure out something else that I wanted to do. And so I had done my student teaching in elementary general music as well as in high school band. And so I decided, okay, well, let's try music education teaching for a year. So I got a job in an elementary school and I was the music teacher. A lot of the students called me Miss Music because they couldn't pronounce my last name. And I saw 600 kids a week. And I had an after school chorus of 120 fourth and fifth graders that I had all by myself. This was my first job right out of school. So I was just kind of thrown directly into everything. And I learned a lot through that year of teaching. And so after that year of teaching, I decided I liked kids, but I didn't like them in that number. And so I went back to get my master's degree. And honestly, the master's degree was there because I did the master's degree because I honestly did not know what I wanted to do. My now husband, I had just met, and he was living in that same area as where I got my master's. And so I said, okay, well, let's figure this out and be with him and all that. So the master's degree was a kind of a weird time. It was a weird time of self-discovery and figuring out what I really wanted. So then I decided I really wanted to go and get my doctorate degree because I wanted to become a flute professor, like many of us do. So we moved across the country to Seattle, and we lived in Seattle for 6 years where I completed my doctorate. And then throughout that whole time, I was applying for jobs for flute professor positions. I applied to 90-ish jobs over the course of 6 years and got into the finals like 7 times. And so that taught me a lot. And I kept going after that dream for a long time until I realized that my dream had changed. And that is how we got to where we are today. I am not affiliated with a university necessarily these days. I'm working completely on my own. I have an online business called KE Creative that I have with 2 team members, Anna Marie and Laura. And we develop different products, digital courses, and educational materials for classical musicians who need help navigating this path, and as well as knowing how to learn skills that were not taught in school, such as marketing, how to do website design, how to start your own studio, all that kind of stuff. And I also have a private flute studio called the Georgia Flute Academy, and I teach 18 kids a week through my private studio. I go out to schools every week and I work with students of all ages. And I just really enjoy how varied everything is that I do. It's truly a portfolio career. And it is all on my own terms, and it is all doing whatever I want to do, whatever I see is best for me and what I see, how I want to serve our music community.
Very well said. And you nailed it right on the head about a portfolio career, because that's something I talk about through 360 is you need to have a healthy portfolio when it comes, in terms of your different income streams. If you have all of your eggs in one basket, well, what happens if that basket goes away?
Exactly. Like was exactly what we've experienced, right?
Yeah, with the pandemic and maybe other seasons of other people's lives. But definitely, I think millionaires have like 7 different streams of income. So, if one stream goes away, then you have the other 6 or whatever the case may be. So kudos to you for doing the M School and your Flute Academy and working with students within the different schools. Bravo to you. And you don't know this, but I'm going to go ahead and just be very vulnerable because heck, that's what I do here on the show. You were actually one of the pivotal people in the early stages of my pivot. So I don't know if you remember our conversation at NFA, but you had said something about you searching for that one academic job. You and your husband were going around, you were a finalist, and at some point you realized, I'm sure there were other factors to this decision, but one of the factors, I think, if I'm recalling it correctly, you said, we got tired of not settling down. We got tired of wondering, where are we going to place our home? Where are we going to set up our family? And we just went ahead and bought a house and decided, these are our terms. This is my life. This is what we're going to do. Boom. And at the time, I was going through those different academic searches. And I was starting to get really, really frustrated.
Yes.
Same with you. I was a finalist in a few different scenarios. And I thought, well, if I just keep going, keep going, keep going, if I keep throwing that arrow at this target, it's going to hit at some point. But it made me think and reflect, over this idea of how fair is that to myself? How fair is that to my husband? How fair is that to the rest of my family? Because everything was on pause. It was, literally, like right now, nobody can really see this, but I'm living in like an itty bitty studio because all of my things are in a storage unit because I went across the world to do a tour in hopes to get that job.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, my husband, who's very loving, said, and kind of kindly put his foot down, like, hey, Heidi, what are we doing here? And we're going to be moving into a house next week. And when this episode airs, we'll be in it. But I want to thank you for just being very honest and open about that process and the reality of that season for you. Because then when I started realizing and noticing other people in my life pop up, not just you, but Kathy Blocky and other mentors were popping up with these stories. I'm like, wait a second, this can't be coincidence. So when I finally came to my realization 2 years later in 2021, going now into 2022, it made it easier because I'm like, well, all of these phenomenal women are doing it.
Yeah.
Why can't I do it? And so that was a long-winded answer and explanation to say thank you for being one of those pivotal forces in the beginning of my journey to that realization.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. That means so much because I feel like that so many people don't share those stories. And I think that if more of us did share those stories with people who are going through the same path, it would be really helpful for them to have permission in a way to say, you know what, maybe this is not what I want to do. Maybe this is the thing that maybe I can do something on my own and be just as happy, if not happier. So, and it is a process. And I speak with so many musicians who are right out of school or very early in their career, and they still want to do those traditional jobs. And they say, I really want to do it. I think that's my dream job. And my answer is always, you'd go and you do that and you go for it as long as you want. Just know that if something starts changing for you and you decide that maybe that is not your dream job, maybe it's not as attractive as it used to be, then that is okay. You're always allowed to change paths, do something different. You're always allowed to stay down that same path, but you have to listen to your own heart and you have to start noticing then when maybe, you have that little thought in the back of your brain, maybe this isn't the right path for me anymore.
I see. So would that be your advice then to said person? If said person, and I think it's safe to say this. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's safe to say that this nugget from our professors who mean well, ingrained in our brains as students, you're going to get one of two jobs. You're going to teach in academia, especially if you're going to get a DMA degree, right?
Right.
You're going to teach in academia, or you're going to perform in the orchestra. And when that doesn't pan out, we think we failed, right?
Exactly.
So if somebody is trying to, what you just explained beautifully, if somebody is realizing, okay, those two paths aren't for me, it's not panning out the way I had anticipated, how do they find their path then? How do they do that? Because at first, when you're pivoting, you're like, all right, I'm going to pick up and shift. That's great and all, but what am I pivoting into? How do they determine that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a number one question for many people too, because they just want to see what other opportunities are out there if plan A or plan B don't work. And my advice is to always look for clues because the clues exist. It has been told to you a million times already about what you should pivot to or what your strengths are. And so you look for clues. And so the way that you look for those clues are you look for things like, what do people always ask me about? What are people always interested in? What do people always compliment me on? When I talk to people, what is the thing that they're seeking advice for? And that is the clue about the path you are supposed to be going down. And it might not be super clear yet, but as long as you have an ear open for that, and as long as you hear, when people are continually asking you to do things of a certain nature, that's a really big clue that is your gift and that is your special talent that is maybe outside of teaching at the higher education level or playing in an orchestra. So for me, I always had to do a ton of things. I made it that way. So I did lots and lots of different things when I was in school. I was an intern for the Atlanta Symphony. I was a music education major. I was involved in the summer music camps through the university. I designed the website already. I was doing some social media stuff already. Whenever anybody needed someone to do something with elementary teaching, I was the first call person. So before I even really knew it, I was already doing lots of different things and wearing lots of different hats. And I was teaching the whole way through. So when people started asking me if I could build their website, if I could come out to their school to teach sectionals, how did I recruit students for a private studio? People were asking me all of these things. They weren't asking me how good I was at playing the flute. They weren't asking me about teaching in higher education. They were asking me about those different things. And so looking back now, I can totally see those clues, those little breadcrumbs were dropped all along the way since day one of college. So if you're trying to, look for different paths that might seem a little bit interesting to you outside of the traditional, just look and see what people are saying. Look and see what people are telling you, and be open and take a look and follow people on social media who do have different paths. One thing that's really, really cool that I love is in my classical musicianeer Facebook group, we have these monthly musicianeer meetups, which is just where people can come and hang. And there are some folks that are pretty regular in that group, and they are so smart because they're coming and hanging out with people who do things that are outside of the traditional path. And they're talking to us and picking our brain, and we're talking about different topics. And it's like right there for them on a silver platter to make amazing network connections with people who are doing things different and can just hang out, for like an hour a month. And so we love that. And that would be another great thing to do, is to follow people who do different things. And I call them musicianeers, portfolio career musicians who do things that are outside of the traditional, and just be around them and pay attention to those clues that are dropped all the time, all around us.
Ooh, I love the breadcrumb analogy. I'm such a visual person. Yeah, they are there. They really are. And I think it's hard to see. That's a great reminder to look for those breadcrumbs. Sometimes it's because my pivoting story is still so fresh.
Yes.
It's hard to see those breadcrumbs, though, when you're in pain.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Hugely. Yep. And sometimes you maybe know that those breadcrumbs exist and you know that that's that thing you want to do, but you're so resistant to it. That's how I was for years. And when I made my pivot, same thing. I was in bad condition. I was so depressed, very lost, incredibly devastated that this thing I'd worked so hard for so long was not working, and I was done with it. And I knew that, but it was like I was grieving that part of my life and that part of my career. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. I knew what I was going to do. I knew that I was going to, at that point, be an adjunct professor and have a private studio and freelance. And the online stuff was a little bit in the back of my mind, but had not really come out yet. And I knew that that was what I was going to do and that I would be happier doing it. But still, it was really, really painful. And I was very, very resistant to making that change.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I completely resonate with that. I'm a very stubborn person by nature. And so it's like, no.
Exactly. And I think it's because a lot of it is our identity that's wrapped up into it.
Yep.
We identify so strongly with being a flutist, being a classical flutist, being a person who's done all of this stuff. We've worked our butt off. We've invested thousands of dollars into doing the things on the checklist that we're supposed to do, and nothing is coming from it. And that is so heartbreaking for so many people. And we're just really attached to that identity. So letting go of that is painful.
Yeah. And I think we strive, and rightfully so, like it's good to have goals, right? To have a target in front of us and to start making headway and having those steps go towards that, right? But if you're not seeing the return on your investment, if you're not happy, if you're thinking, what if, over here, then you may need to pivot. But I say all of that because I mean, everyone's pivoting story is going to be a little different, but I just know like from firsthand experience that those titles, right? Because we're told like in school, you're going to be an orchestral musician or you're going to be a professor. So we start putting these titles on us like, I am Dr. Begay. And you hold a lot of value to that because you worked hard for your degree, right? And same for you. But what I learned through my pivot, one big thing that I wished I would have known earlier on is that you hold so much value than those titles. Like your salary title or the salary number, the figure, the title of your job, the title of your degrees, because this idea of title is coming up because you mentioned identity. We identify being a professor or we identify being a performer. And when that doesn't happen, we get really devastated. And like you said, get depressed and we grieve and we mourn that, and rightfully so. But I guess out of everything that I'm saying here is that if you're listening to this, and what I'm hearing from Katherine is, it sounds like both of us went through a season of grieving and mourning, and that's natural, right? But just knowing that your identity and your title is so much more than those positions and degrees, etc., really grounded me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to see that too, because you think that your value is wrapped up in those titles. I'm not valuable unless I get that title. But if you take that away from it, then you can actually see, oh no, I actually have way more I can offer to this world. It's just going to be packaged a little bit differently.
And I loved how, well, you do these Friday fives. And I think, if my memory serves me right, I think you mentioned in one of your Friday fives something along the lines of, let's celebrate those other titles. So if you're not a professor, if you're not an orchestral musician, but you're doing X, Y, Z within your niche in your community, let's celebrate those titles.
Exactly. And that's one thing in the culture that I would love to see shift is, you know, when people have their big announcement posts on social media that they got their professor job or they got their orchestral position, and they get so celebrated for that, as they should, because that's huge. I just wish that when someone posts something about starting their own business or launching their first product or having a studio recital, I wish those would be celebrated as well, because those take a lot of work, because you're building every aspect of that yourself. And it's great to get these orchestral positions because you're working your butt off for them. But I wish that it would be on an equal level with people being celebrated for making their own things or creating their own events or their own ensembles or their own businesses.
Oh my goodness, yes. And being a year and a half into it, creating a class from scratch to launch takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of creativity. It takes a lot of endurance and stamina. And if you don't bring a team on, you're doing it on your own. And holy moly.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Like just developing the curriculum, thinking of the content, the organization of it, then packaging it up beautifully so that way people can like understand how you're going to serve them, and putting it up to the website, selling it, enrolling people. Oh my goodness. Like it's a whirlwind, but it's an amazing whirlwind.
Yeah, for sure. Because you know that was you that created everything. And especially the biggest payoff is when it helps people and it impacts them. And you help them do something that they didn't see possible for themselves at the end of the day. And that's why we do that.
Yeah.
My name is Eric Branner. I'm the CEO and founder of Fonz.com. I'm also a third-generation music teacher. We started Fonz because I desperately needed software to run my music school more efficiently and professionally. Fonz design is sleek, modern, and minimalist, but its focus is on maximizing your revenue, building your business, and facilitating trust with your students. In a recent survey, the average studio owner said using Fonz saved them 10 hours each month in admin tasks, and 88% of the teachers said using Fonz significantly improved their job satisfaction. Perhaps the coolest part about Fonz is the community of providers we're building, and how we're working together to elevate the amazing work we get to do as independent music teachers. Sign up today for your free trial at Fonz.com. Book a demo with our team and see all the ways Fonz can help you earn more while creating a greater impact on your community. Thanks.
So speaking of digital classes, I may be putting my foot in my mouth, but if if I'm correct, I think you have 3 digital classes out there.
Well, I have several.
Okay.
This past year, since I now have a team, we've been able to expand our offerings a little bit. The original one is called the Music Teacher's Playbook, and that is basically for music teachers who want to learn how to run a private studio successfully and make a full-time living doing that. That is a live class. So that means that you're working live with me, and now my team. And it's 14 weeks and it's great and it's fantastic and it's my favorite. And then one of our latest classes is called M School, which is also a live class, also 14 weeks. And M School is basically everything you didn't learn in music school that you need to have as a freelancer, as a entrepreneur. And even if you're thinking about going in that direction, we cover everything that you need to know for that. And then this week, actually, we're launching one of my pre-recorded classes, which is called Marketing for Music Teachers, which is geared directly towards music teachers and learning all about marketing and how music teachers can use marketing to grow their studios and to get more eyeballs on their studios so that they're featured in press or they're featured on different websites, that type of thing. So that's like 3. Fourth one is called Flute Roots, which is a beginner flute pedagogy course where I walk through flutists on my process of starting beginners. Because I remember when I got out of school, I had no clue how to start a beginner flute player. And method books are great, but that doesn't help you much when you have a little kid standing there in front of you and they cannot make a sound and they're crying and you need some help. So I created this course as a guide to how to start kids on the flute from the very beginning. I have another mini course called The Ultimate Guide to Recruiting Music Students, which is the very basics of how to recruit for your studio. And then this month, we actually just launched our latest subscription thing, which is called the Music Teacher Monthly. And it's an email newsletter. And you pay like an annual fee or by the month or whatever. And it's basically all of my clever ideas for my studio that I do myself with my own students. There's printables in there. There's history stuff. There's theory games. There's different things like this. For December, we have one for this next month about how you make sock snowmen and make them into triads and show the students how you can, change for the different inversions and stuff as like a studio craft. So that's our latest thing. So I'm really excited about all of those. So yes, I do have quite a few digital courses and digital materials now.
3, 4, 5, several.
Yeah.
So throughout those several different launches and designing these digital classes, what's the biggest takeaway that you've learned from that process?
I've learned a lot of different things. One of the biggest things that I've learned is that digital courses and products work. And I think that a lot of people were very skeptical about digital courses for a while, especially in the music industry. I started doing this before anybody knew what Zoom was. And so there was a lot of skepticism about, does it really work? Is it really worth the money? Is this scammy? And the truth is it does actually work. And when you're leading people through your course materials, you create such an incredible bond with them from helping them. You're helping them in their life. And so the community that you create and the impact you have is humongous. So it's really, really rewarding. The other thing that I've learned is that nothing ever goes on time. Everything is always at least 3 weeks behind schedule.
Okay.
And that's okay. That's okay. It's great to have timelines and it's great to have launch dates and all that kind of stuff. But as an entrepreneur, you want to get it right. Now, that doesn't mean get it perfect. That means get it right. So you don't want to have a rushed launch of something. You want to make sure that you get it right and that it's ready and that you're really good to go. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be finished. When I launched the Music Teacher's Playbook for the first time, I had maybe the first 3 classes completely done, and the rest of them were skeleton outlines.
Okay.
And I did that on purpose because I wanted to see what people wanted and what they needed so that I could adapt the material instead of spending a ton of time doing what I thought that they needed. And so it has definitely changed. I've been doing the Music Teacher's Playbook for about 5 years. And throughout those 5 years, it has changed every single year based on the needs of the teachers and the musicians that are in it. So that is a big lesson that I've learned too. Another big lesson that I've learned is that I actually do know what I'm talking about and my methods do work, because when you launch things or you're thinking about offering products, immediately, you have your imposter syndrome start showing up. Who am I to be leading this? Who am I to be telling all these people what to do? So once you just rip the Band-Aid off and you go with your gut and you do it, you can actually be very validated that you do know what you're doing, and you're reaching way more people than you would as a college professor, by the way. I've already worked with hundreds of musicians and have changed them from making no money in music to having a full-time job in music on their own terms many times over. So the reach for these digital courses is amazing, and the people that you get to meet and help is super cool.
Yes. And maybe not even hundreds, but thousands,
Yeah.
even with
Yeah.
your like Instagram lives that you do and people come in and out, or Facebook lives, even if they're not a paying client or customer right away, you're still having this like huge impact at the international level. And the ripple effect is massive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And I've learned so much about the classical music industries in other countries and how it's set up differently. And I've worked with people from Australia and Great Britain and all over the world, Canada. And I've learned so much about how different the music communities function and operate in those different countries. And it's really interesting. There's a lot of things that are similar, and there's a lot of things that are not similar. So it's really cool to be able to get into somebody else's shoes and see what's going on in their corner of the world.
Oh, for sure. I did some CV edits for some flutists abroad. And when I did, certain things or whatever, they weren't necessarily questioning like formatting. And I kind of adhered and listened to how the EU tends to format their resumes and stuff. So I kind of let them have the lead on that. But my different teaching styles, I would say, oh, let's look at an example of X CV, right? And they would be baffled. They're like, you're a teacher and you're showcasing me your CV? Like, you're being that open and vulnerable and honest to show me your experience? I'm like, yeah? What's the big deal? Like, we need to look at an example. And they're like, oh, professors here would never do something like that. They're not that they're stingy, but they're a little bit more conservative with showcasing their documents. And so it was really interesting. I don't know if you've come across that, but that was an eye opener for me when I was working with like French, German, and Finnish flutists. I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. But you don't get those opportunities if perhaps you're a teacher at a small community college. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Of course, every opportunity is beautiful. Every position is beautiful, but I often wonder the same thing of what you're saying. If I was teaching in, or at a small community college, would I have those international experiences where I'm talking and helping flutists from across the globe, UK, Bulgaria, Greece? Would I have that experience? Maybe, maybe not. And it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's very different how things are set up all the way across the world, and in different cultures, and then within those cultures, different classical music cultures.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. So going back to your digital classes and the lessons you've learned from that, if somebody is thinking about putting their ideas out there because they've seen results either for themselves or they've seen results within their studio and they're kind of mulling over this idea. And this idea for a digital course is kind of just sitting on the back burner. And they want to go ahead and just do it, put it out there, but they're a little hesitant. Is there something that you wished you would have known before your first launch? Or Are there any words of advice for said person?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have is to work with someone who's done it. And when we're taking lessons, we're working with people who have done it. They've done the thing, and so we're learning from their real life experience. I was very lucky because when I started the digital course thing, I had no clue about it. There was nothing online about it. It's been in the business world for years, but I didn't know about how musicians would feel about it or if they would even respond to it. So I worked with a coach who was a musician who has launched hundreds, not hundreds, but many courses, digital courses online. And she guided me through every single step of it, the marketing of it, the organization of it. We debriefed after every class, and it was just really helpful to have her push me. And honestly, for the music teacher's playbook, we came up with the whole thing and the entire marketing plan and put it out there in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it's a perfect example of you shouldn't wait until it's perfect. You need to wait till it's good and when it's right and put it out. But you shouldn't wait till it's perfect because, it may go great. It may flop. I've had courses that have done both. And so if you've invested a ton of time into them and getting them completely perfect from A to Z and they flop, then you just spend all this time and energy creating something that maybe needs to look a little bit different. And so as you're creating these courses, the people in them will tell you what they need. And so you always go with what they need and you make your adjustments like that along the way. So for someone who has a digital course in the back of their mind, like, I think that this would work really well as a digital course. I would say the first thing is to work with someone, either in a group coaching program or as a one-on-one coach to help you get the blueprint for what you want to do out there. And then my second piece of advice is to really work on your audience. Your audience does not have to be big. Your audience is mostly on social media, and the audience does not have to be big, but it has to be full of people who share the same mindset you have and the same ideas that you have that you're going to be sharing in your products later on. And so when I did the Music Teacher's Playbook, I had already been going to NFA conventions and the Mid-Atlantic Convention and the Florida Flute Association conventions for years. And so I had already actually had a pretty substantial audience from showing up all the time everywhere and going and teaching at universities. And so everybody knew from all these presentations that I've done about what my passion is, what I'm good at, and they know that was a thing that I did and they trusted that. And so as soon as I put that offer out there, they were very much excited about it and enrolling very quickly because I had already had that connection with them. So it's very important to grow your audience and, have a good group of people. Again, it doesn't have to be humongous. It just has to be full of people that share the same ideals that you have and share the same interests as you.
Oh my goodness. There was so much wealth there. I always love telling my guests that I can't wait to go through the editing process and then listen back to it again, because that's when I get to be in the seat of, editor, but then later in the seat of listener. Because now I'm a host, I'm conversing and making sure that the conversation flows and there's good segues. But then when it goes after editing, I get to listen to it as a listener and pull out my tablet and take notes. So that right there, I'm going to be for sure stylus, tablet, jotting down notes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I love it. And you're right. You have to get yourself out there. You have to network. You have to put people around you and find your tribe and build that audience, because if you go and launch your digital class, you need someone to sell to, someone to buy, or enroll. And there was something else you said too. And it was this little nugget of you can't do it alone. So if you're building a digital course and you've never done that before, well, what do we do as flutists? We go out and hire a teacher to help us with our tone, our technique, etc. Same thing. If you've never been in the digital space and you don't know how to launch a class from scratch to launch, get a coach.
Exactly.
Because we can't do it alone.
Yeah, and make sure you have taken digital courses before. That's another huge
Mm.
piece of advice is if you want to build a digital course, you need to take a digital course so you can get experience looking at the different platforms that we host them on. You can take a look at the marketing leading up to it. You just need to look at the framework that's around a digital course and yeah, absolutely take the course to learn stuff, but look at how the whole thing is set up. I just told my M school people yesterday, start paying attention to my posts because we're in the marketing section of our course right now. And so I start paying attention. There's always an intention behind it. And there's always some subject that I'm always thinking about whenever I write any type of social media post. So make sure, you're looking at that. So it's definitely looking at the whole big picture and picking up things by going through and experiencing themselves. And I will say too, if you are thinking about launching a digital course, make sure you're an expert in it. And being an expert doesn't mean taking one digital course on it and doing it for a couple months and then all of a sudden you're an expert. Being an expert in it means you have done it multiple times over the course of several years and that you've had ups and downs with it. So you can't, when you're making digital courses, you need to be an expert. I see a lot of people, unfortunately, all the time who charge outrageous amounts of money for their digital courses and they claim to be an expert. And, you look at their bio and all they've ever done is play in an orchestra. And they're selling something that is completely not related to that at all. And so, it makes you kind of think like, I'm wondering, I wonder why this person's bio isn't talking to the thing about the thing that they're selling and being an expert on, So make sure you are an expert on it. We really want to make sure that these digital courses are around to help people and educate them about these topics that are not taught in school. And so therefore we have to keep the value of them really, really high.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, making sure that you stick with the elements and the skill sets within your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. So since you've been a musicpreneur now for 5 or 6 years, right? How have you evolved as a businesswoman?
Oh, I have evolved big time. I am very introverted. I am a very shy person and I'm a big time people pleaser. And so, having to put myself out there, my coach telling me all the time, Katherine, it's too nice. That's too nice of a post. You need to not sugarcoat it. You just need to come out and say exactly what you mean. That was really hard for me because I was in this mindset of don't rock the boat. Everybody's judging you. People aren't going to agree with you. And then your name's going to go in the mud. And then that's the end of that. I had all of these ideas in my head. And so I was very careful for a long time about what I would post and how I would post about it. So then I finally figured out, you know what, my posts or my courses or anything are exclusive. I want them to exclude people. If you don't agree with being an entrepreneur, and if you agree with following the traditional path, no matter what, you shouldn't take my courses.
Yeah.
You shouldn't agree with everything that I say, and so I speak my own truth with what I believe. And for people who believe in that same thing, it resonates with them and helps them. And that's my main goal, is to help other people. So once I finally started realizing it doesn't have to be inclusive, it can be exclusive, then that really, really helped me to get a little bit more free and really develop my ideas that had been lurking in the back of my brain, but I was too scared to put out there. I've also realized too that in the beginning, it was terrifying. Like I said, I had imposter syndrome. I felt like I was a nobody. My music teacher's Playbook was one of the first digital courses for musicians that existed. And I was wondering, how people were going to see this and view it. And I remember I was like so sick the day that I launched it and just said a prayer and hit the post button and was just so stressed out. And I'm not like that anymore. I'm excited actually every time I launch a new thing. And the one thing that has stayed with me since the beginning is the amount of excitement I experience when someone actually enrolls and the excitement I experience when someone graduates and lets me know what they're doing now and how much I help them get to that place of what they're doing now. So that hasn't changed. But all of the bravery and the courage and the resiliency, that thing has definitely changed for sure.
That's exciting. Yeah, and
Mhm.
it's neat to see that growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you're right. What I'm hearing, and I know this about you just from watching you and from speaking with you, you do have a heart of an educator, really thriving when you see your students or clients succeed and get from point A to point B. And you're like, yes, I was a part of that process. Like, it sends you over the moon.
Oh, it absolutely does. And many people do digital courses and create them for profit and to make a lot of money.
Mhm.
And that's their number one goal, is to go for to create a large income. Yeah, it's great, especially as a portfolio career musician. You have to have all those pots cooking all the time so that when one of them goes out, you can crank up the fire on the rest of them. And having on digital courses is one way to do that. But my push is always the people that I'm
Mhm.
serving and the community that I'm serving, and just knowing that there are people out there who need to know the things that I teach, and really helping expand this so that more and more classical musicians can stay in the craft and not leave the craft because they couldn't get the job in the orchestra or as a professor. There are so much other things that you can do in music and, be a full-time musician. So that's always the goal, is to help people see that for themselves.
Yeah, I love that. And it's all about people and serving people. Because if you don't see
Hmm.
results, or if they don't see results, then we didn't really do our job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So speaking of other people helping others
Hmm.
get from point A to point B in their careers, let's circle back to the small plug that I did at the beginning of the conversation for the Ultimate Music Business Summit.
Hmm.
You are one of 36 presenters at the summit, and it's going down January 6th, 7th, and 8th, 2022. Can you share with the 360 listeners what your presentation's topic is going to be about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do a presentation about digital courses and the introductory material of how to create a digital course. It's going to be a super quick presentation, but I'm going to put as many easy to understand and digestible things that I possibly can to take you from your idea all the way to the launch of your digital course. So it's going to be a step-by-step presentation of how to go from idea to launch. And I have boiled down everything I've learned over the past 5 years from launching many digital courses. I'm taking the biggest things that I've learned along the way that everyone needs to know when they are launching a digital course, and putting it into that presentation. So it'll be definitely like a little roadmap to creating, going from just an idea to a launch of a digital course.
That's phenomenal. And just side note, from one friend to another, I told Arthur and Garrett, the other two co-organizers for the summit, I said, I call dibs on monitoring Catherine's presentation. So just so you know, I want to be there to make sure to make sure that I have that stylus and tablet out taking notes. So I hope I get to monitor your session, but I will definitely
Yay.
watch it, whether I'm a monitor or an attendee. I will be there.
Oh, yay. That'll be so fun. Well, that's awesome. That'll be great to be there together for that.
Yeah. For you, the listener, if you want to check out Catherine's presentation and you want to see when it's going down, if you want more information about the Ultimate Music Business Summit, go to musicsummit.biz. That's musicsummit.biz. And all of the information is there. The other 36 presenters are there. The keynote speakers, actually, Dr. Drew X. Coles. We have Kathy Blocky being a presenter, and other flutists within our niche. They will be there too. So it's going to be a really great shindig, and there's going to be so much value for everybody, from music production, audio engineering, networking, digital courses and how to create them, building those relationships, building a residency, and so much more. So go to musicsummit.biz for that. So before we get to picks, can you share with the listeners where people can follow you?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Instagram. My handle is just Katherine Emeneth, just my name. On Facebook, also Katherine Emeneth is my name. And my Facebook group is called Classical Musicianeer. And we're fairly active in there too. And there's almost 2,000 musicianeers that have joined us, and we talk about all different things that are really relevant to our community. So those are the primary places. All of my courses and all of the things that we talked about today are housed on my website, which is katherineemeneth.com. And that is where I am online all of the time.
Nice. And the last segment of the show is called Picks. I love to see guests' favorite TV shows or magazines or books or whatever the case may be. So what is your pick for today?
My pick for today is actually an Instagram account, and it's called Ronald the Basset. And it is about a basset hound named Ronald and his adventures of being a basset hound named Ronald. And so many times since I'm online all the time, I need a little mental break. And so I'll go look and see what Ronald's up to online. And it always brings me a smile and a little bit of a laugh. So I would say Ronald the Basset. If you haven't seen his Instagram account, you should go check it out.
Oh my goodness. I think you are the first person in 4 years to mention an Instagram account as their pick.
Really?
Kid you not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. We watch Netflix shows and stuff, One of our favorite movies to watch around Thanksgiving is called Free Birds. It is, about turkeys and stuff. So that's another good pick for now. And I don't really read books, but I do listen to a lot of books as I am exercising. And so one of my favorite ones recently is called Atomic Habits. It's a really great book. I mostly read books having to do with leadership or entrepreneurship or psychology. So that one is another really great one. But Ronald the Basset, it doesn't get much better than Ronald the Basset.
I love it. I'm going to have to check him out after our conversation. Well, thank you so much, Katherine, for your time, talents, and expertise. And having you here really is a full circle moment for me. It's just I met you back in 2019. We've kind of conversed along the ways here and there. And just to kind of sit down and finally just for 40, 60 minutes just to pick your brain and to get to know you that much better is a joy for me. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for hosting this amazing podcast. It is just a really great gift to the world that you're bringing all of these topics to light for so many people.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to today's content. I hope that these gems have brought you some new ideas that you can start implementing within your music business today. Friendly reminder, 2 things. 1, the webinar that went down on 12/15 is going to be active for the next 2 weeks. So if you want access to that webinar, message me at HeidiKBGay.com to get that webinar before December 31st. Second thing is, if you want those corporate sponsorships, reach out to me. I promise I do not bite. So if you go to HeidiKBGay.com/contact, we can talk away. I am all ears. I want to hear what your podcasting goals are, and I want to hear what your music goals are. If you are a musician who podcasts and you want to start bringing in that stream of income through corporate sponsorships, then I have a December 22nd class that's going down live, and you can pick my brain in real time about how to contact and how to start obtaining these corporate sponsorships for your show. Podcast costs, they add up, right? The production costs add up so easily between the audio hosting site, your website, scheduling tools, PicMonkey, Canva, etc. You should not do it alone, and you should be compensated for your time, talents, and energy. Do not leave money on the table. Start bringing in thousands of dollars a month through corporate sponsorships to help support your business. I'm rooting for you, and I cannot wait to hear from you. Thanks. Let's talk about flute.